Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. So before I begin, we're going to just shift the energy a little bit. That was so beautiful. I just went into this space where I would rather not be here. Up here. I want to be there. So it was so heart-opening and so nice. Thank you, Robert. And thank you for everyone so far, and thank you to Reverend Brian for inviting me here today to be with you. It's quite an honor. You know, talking about being out on the farm, and my grandmother's, there was a back porch that we would sit on, and as any farm country porch has, there were flies buzzing around. So my question to you is, how do you know which one of the flies on the porch are actors or actresses? No one knows? They are the ones on the screen. So now you know, when you're sitting on that porch, which ones are actors and actresses, right? There is a miracle working presence. This is from High Mysticism by Emma Curtis Hopkins. There is a miracle working presence. It's a man's and woman's privilege and obligation to make identification with this miracle working presence, spilling over with new radiations as the open flower spills over with new perfumes. All miracle workings are angelic ministries. So I love that passage because it puts another idea in my head about how big God is. A miracle working presence. And so we call this God by many names, don't we? And it always amazes me that we can even speak and understand each other in this world of form. I don't know about you, but sometimes my husband Sandy and I have trouble hearing the right words and interpreting them the same way. And invariably it can cause what is known as friction or arguments sometimes. And yet, we are learning, after 25 years of being together, we are learning to understand one another and take that pause and to be able to answer in kindness. And so, as I say these words today, as I talk about God or Spirit or Divine, I want you to feel free to go to your heart space and say what's right for you. So I want you to listen with different ears, see with different eyes, and understand what is right for you. Because my words may not strike you physically, but there's a heart level connection that we can understand together and we can come together on. And it was interesting because when I told Sandy the topic of my talk today, he says, oh, we all have life sentences. And I immediately went to the human life sentence. And yet I thought, you know, we do have a life sentence. We are here to live for God, and that is our life sentence. We are here to live in God, through God, as God. And so we all do have a life sentence. But all of the things have different meanings, don't they, on these different levels? So when I say the word God, if I say the word God to every person in this room, I know that each one of you has a God of your own. And it's maybe far from my idea. It may be even deeper and richer than what I have found, because you happen to be my teacher as well. In our center, we've started a practice. I loved your song this morning where your meet and greet was, and we've started a practice of singing You Are the Face of God. Do you know that Karen Drucker song, the beautiful one? So as I stand here and just gaze out for a moment at each one of you, I want you to know that you are the face of God. And I hold you in my heart. and you are a part of me. You are the face of God. So for this moment, for this time, I'd like us to stay immersed in that knowing that each one of us here is that presence and holds a specialness about us. There's something special that we bring forth, that only we can bring forth. So I want you to also to realize, I don't know if Reverend Brian has mentioned this to you, that we all work for the same company. We all work for the same company. Now, some of you may be saying, oh yes, Centers for Spiritual Living. But that's just the sidebar. The real umbrella is God, Inc. So tomorrow morning, when you get up to do your daily tasks, and you begin thinking about going to work, remember your primary company is God, Inc. For me, it puts a little bit different spin on the whole day, that I have a job that I am working for and with, actually, because it's a partnership, God, Inc. And I give Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis credit for that one. She sent that out, and it just resonated with me to the point where I want to share it and spread it around the world, that we're all working for God, Inc. So just a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you this in story form. There was once a little girl growing up in Ohio who was very, very shy. One might even say painfully shy. She did not want to be with anyone outside her family and friends and people she knew. One time in late summer, at probably age 5, her parents had to leave her with some neighbors. There was a meeting and her brothers were out, and she had to be left with some neighbors who she knew. But a few hours later, when they came back, Faith Ellen was sitting in the very same chair holding the very same cookie that they left her with. That is how my life was. It felt hard when I wasn't with people that I knew and trusted, like my family and my close friends. And it was hard to raise my hand in school, because I knew the answer and I wanted to answer, but it was so hard because I would have to talk out loud. Now that's a hard one for you to believe, isn't it? Standing up here. But I knew the answer, but what if it was wrong? What if it was wrong? What if someone laughed at me? What if someone made fun? I don't know what I thought, but it was very hard. So I would just raise my hand after someone else did, hoping the teacher would call on them first, right? So now let me be clear that I was very comfortable at home. I was very loved, and I was very comfortable with my friends. I had everything I needed. I was not wanting. I loved my family and I loved my books. And yet, a time came, as time went on, it was clear that I wanted more. That I felt something was missing. And I was not living the way I wanted to live. This was when I was a junior in high school. I finally made some thoughts began to come to me. It was a day of reckoning. And the thought said, I counted as Independence Day, I don't want to be like my Aunt Alma, who was afraid. I don't want to be fearful. And I don't want to be shy anymore. There are kids having a lot more fun than I'm having. And I want to be more like them. So as this journey began with thoughts, there were also questions. What can I do? What are they doing that looks like more fun than I'm having? And what can I do and have the consequences for that? Thank God I had the smarts to ask that question. What can I do that I can suffer the consequences for and still be okay? Well, as the journey began, I decided that there were 2 strategic things I could do. I could talk inappropriately in class. Whisper to people. I was such a rule follower, I never did that. But I could talk to my neighbors. And I got moved around every class so many times that they got tired of moving me around. it was a real shock for my teachers too. I could pass notes. And I could suffer the consequences of the teacher saying, don't talk, or calling me down, or don't pass notes, and I wasn't passing anything I was embarrassed to have read. I could do that, and there was a freedom involved in those two tiny little things, a real freedom that came about from that. So everything was going along really well, just as planned, until one day in Latin class, my teacher made me very angry. I talked back to him, and I got sent down to the dean's office. This little girl who's never been taught, never had anything, sent to the dean's office. I was hoping my parents wouldn't know. The report cards came out, and deportment was checked on the back of my report card. I don't know if they saw deportment, like you're not doing very well, you're not following all the rules, so we're going to mark this block that says you're off base here. And I looked at it, and I'm like, holy moly. Here I go home, and I'm thinking, maybe my parents don't even look at that section anymore. I can only hope, right? But no, I got called to the table. Got called to the table after dinner, and they asked me about it. And little did I know that my father had gone down to the dean's office and talked to them and said, what's the problem? And they didn't know. They had no idea why I was there. And so I explained to my mom and dad what I was doing. I told them my plan. And I know that they must have said something to me like, well, we'll think about this and get back to you or whatever. I don't remember what they said, but I do remember that they didn't say no. I'm sure they could not have said, oh, go ahead, Faith, go ahead, do whatever you want, because who knows what I would have done. But they didn't say, shame on you, you're embarrassing us, don't do that anymore, straighten up. None of that, because they recognized the importance of what was happening and what was growing in me. Because it was a big change. It was a big change. So I want us to always remember that sometimes our willingness not to chastise someone, it could be a best gift to them, not to say no, especially to our children when they are trying to grow. I'm not saying that you should let them be unsafe or condone it, but perhaps just gently allowing them to step outside that box and be something that they want to be. So my decision and their support got me here today. And that's all of my life story right now that I'm going to share with you. There are some very exciting things that happen later. But I just, yeah, they're even worse. But once I found Science of Mind, I simply knew that I was home. I knew that I was home because being raised in that traditional religion, I found some barriers that I couldn't believe in and I couldn't buy into. I couldn't have a conviction that said, this is right. And in Science of Mind, I have that. I have a conviction and a clarity that there is a truth that supports us in this idea of oneness. I could never buy into that religions were so different. If you didn't believe this way, and if you didn't believe this, that there was a condemnation happening. That was just outside of my frame of reference. So I'm here to tell you that the inner awareness of who we are and what our convictions of life have leads us to commitments that we are willing to make in this life. Because our outer world becomes a mirror of who we are inside. My outer world used to be very, very small. And it has grown exponentially. And so if you're seeing an outer world that is small, perhaps you can make it bigger. If I could do it, I'm sure you can do it. If I could do it, you can do it. This mirror that we have in front of us that mirrors who we are. You are the face of God. So you are mirroring for me who I am. And so what I am receiving matters. Because you are mirroring for me, but the whole world is mirroring for me. And never before in my lifetime have we had a world that has invited us to look closely, look really, really closely at what we believe and what we're called to do. What is our conviction? Our convictions are based on our principles of what we believe. So our belief system, we become convinced of something. Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind book, mine's been around the world, says conviction, the admission of truth. So when we speak our truth and our belief, then we can commit to things that we know line up accordingly. And that's what our life is about, lining up according to our convictions and according to what our beliefs are. And if you've ever committed to something that is against your beliefs or not in accordance with your beliefs, you find it often hard to stay there. But if you are convinced that you are acting in accordance with truth, you find it easier. The path opens easier. So my path of coming out of myself when I was little, yeah, it had bumps in the road. I got sent to the dean's office. When you're on your path, even though it's a path of conviction, there may be bumps in the road, but they're worth it because the end result is more than you anticipated then. And sometimes we can't get there without seeing what that end result will be. But that bump in the road, if I hadn't got sent down to the dean's office, I might have never known if my parents would have approved. And how important is that? How important is that? Would I have chosen, if God had said, Faith, I want to send you to the dean's office, how do you feel about that? No thanks, God. Right? I would not have chosen that. We don't always choose consciously our path. I do believe that we choose it. I don't believe that we are not at choice almost ever. I think we're at choice all the time. Okay? I'm going to tell you another little quick story about a lady named Lucy Emmett from Your Aladdin's Lamp by William Hornaday. Has anyone? These are true stories. William Hornaday took over a radio show from Ernest Holmes called This Thing Called Life. And he and two other men, he and Harlan Ware actually on this book, put together this book based on true stories. The names have changed, most of them. But they come from their experiences and their truth. And this is a story he told about a lady named Lucy Emmett. He had done a radio show the night before where he said he believed in God, and he believed that God had an answer to every problem. God has an answer to every problem. Lucy Emmett, when driving, would listen in her car to radio shows, and she heard him say, God has an answer to every problem, as she was driving to a bridge to commit suicide. She got to the bridge, but they had already blocked it off because too many people had done that deed there. So she could not do it, but she knocked on his office door the next day asking to see him, and her secretary announced to William Hornaday this way: there's a lady outside who is probably suicidal because she's the ugliest person I've ever seen. And if she's not suicidal, I would be if I were her. So as he said that he would see her, even though he had a short window of time, and Lucy Emmett walked in the room, and he was taken aback. Have you ever heard the story of the practitioner that saw a sick person? Practitioner goes to the hospital, walks in a room, walks right back out and calls her practitioner and says, I just saw a sick person, pray for me. It's kind of like that. He saw what he really didn't believe in. because this lady's mouth was so malformed with her teeth were so malformed, that is what announced her presence. And all he could see, and the teeth that he saw became capital letters, teeth. And that's all he could see, and he wondered why this hadn't been taken care of before. What was the problem here? So she explained that she had heard him on the radio, and she said, I want you to help me if every problem has an answer. And he says, well, what do you want? She says, well, I'd like a date for a start. And when she smiled, her mouth even was more, it was hard for him. But he persevered, not asking the questions he would have liked to have asked, but just simply said, well, I don't see you wanting a date recently. She says, well, what do you mean? He says, well, your hands, your nails, your dress, you're unkempt, your hair's not styled, you have on shoes that are not flattering. Anyone who wants a date, any woman who wants a date, prepares herself for the date. And then she found herself in tears, and she was covering her face, and he no longer saw her teeth. So he noticed her hands, and what lovely fingers, and how graceful they were. And he noticed her complexion, and thought any woman would love to have that complexion. And he noticed her figure. Her figure was svelte and nice and lovely. And he noticed all of these things because he couldn't see that flaw anymore. And so he started commenting to her, you have beautiful hands, and you have a complexion that any woman would want. And you have a stature and a figure that is graceful, and you're young. And you told me that you went to school and you have a Phi Beta Kappa pen. Why aren't you wearing it? She says, I won't wear it. She says, I want you to wear it. It's a sign of your intelligence. Wear your pin, that's a start. And immediately, upon leaving, she stopped at the secretary's desk and asked about a hairdresser. And she went home and began her work. She put gloves on before she left the office because she was now embarrassed about her nails. So the work had begun right then and there. She had a conviction within herself that said, I am more than this. I'm more than what people are seeing. But she also, previous to that, she also had a conviction that said, I'm really ugly. And I announce myself when I come in, I'm really ugly, so that's what you see. Because I'm not taking care of myself, because my teeth are the most awful thing. And so that's all I'm going to allow you to see of me. So she began shifting all of that. She got a new hairstyle. She took all of her clothes to the laundry or got rid of them. She bought new clothes. She dressed according to style. And she went to church then. Every Sunday she sat in the back, in the balcony, she said, because Reverend Hornaday didn't even know she was there. But she went because she believed what he had said, that there is an answer. There is an answer. So his recognition, once again, his recognition made such a big difference, what we recognize in people. How convinced are we that we are all God? And do we really act on that? Do we act on our conviction? And instead of saying, can we lift people up instead of putting them down? Can we see beyond the flaw and lift them? This lady, Lucy, had never ever had a compliment in her life. And she heard someone tell her something different. And it changed her life. We have that power. Now this isn't easy. As in my case and in Lucy's case, we both had to do our work. We couldn't just go, okay, I'm going to decide to do this and not do anything. We had to do something. And so I took my little things that I could do and did them. And she did her work and she came back to him he told her, come back to me when you're ready. And it was 6 months. And she came back with a man on her arm, an engagement ring, and plans to do her teeth. And this man was there to help her. He loved her so much. He loved her and saw her in spite of all that other stuff. He said, I always thought she was smart and intelligent, and I just loved her wit and her wisdom, and I just thought she was beautiful. And one day she walked in, and she was all dressed, and she had a new hairdo, and she looked really good, and I knew someone was going to ask her out if I didn't. And so he did. And so he did. It can all happen. It's a conviction that happens. And he was very shy. He was a very shy person, so it was hard for him to get up the nerve to ask her out. But he did it. So don't depend on any one thing to get you out of this, out of whatever it is that you're in. Lucy did her affirmation. She did her physical work. She did her prayer work. She went to church. She did a myriad of things to do this. We have so many tools in Science of Mind, and I'd like to share one with you quickly. How many of you have a practice of looking up? Okay. Some of you have a practice of looking up. Has Reverend Brian talked about this? Looking up? Because it was new to me as of a year or so ago. It was new to me. So I'm going to invite you to start looking up, because it shifts your point of view. It shifts everything. And we can do this. It's an ancient wisdom. Emma Curtis Hopkins talks about it a lot. H.B. Jeffries in his Healing Principles talks about it. The Bible says, look up into the hills from whence cometh your help. This is not new science. It is an ancient science, ancient wisdom. And so I'm going to invite you to start practicing it today and remembering it, and remind each other of it. Remind each other of it. So are you up for, can I have 5 minutes? Okay. I want you to be comfortable in your seats, and I'd like, so I'm going to take you through this quickly, and I'll take you through it again afterwards if anyone has a yearning for it or wants to hear more. And bring to mind something that you would like to shift or change. I'm going to say don't make it one of those tissue issues. Don't make it your biggest thing. But, something that's bothering you, not quite right, not in alignment. If you just bring that to mind, and I'm going to invite you to look down at the floor, kind of, in front, just comfortably, but looking at the floor, and think about this issue that you would like to see a shift in, that you would like to see a change in. So as you look at the floor, I want you to begin to notice what's happening in your body temple. Is there some place that you feel this? How is your breathing? And now I want you to, is there anyone who would like to say anything about how their breathing was or how their body was? Stuck? Okay. Pardon?
Shallow breathing.
Shallow breathing. So now let's just look up and look straight ahead from where you are, keeping this issue in mind, looking straight ahead. And once again, notice your body temple. What's happening inside? Scanning. Is there any shift? I see a few heads nodding, yes. Okay. So now what I want you to do is to look up. And I don't want you to hurt your neck. I want you to gaze up, maybe to the corner of the room. If you're outside looking at hills far away, looking up at a treetop, look up and think about this idea that's been problematic. And gazing upward, scanning your body temple. Look up unto the hills from whence cometh our help, this ancient wisdom of looking up. And I want you to remember you can always look up with your eyes closed. I don't know if you realize that, but sometimes when my eyes are closed, I just continue looking up. So, how do you feel now? Has there been any shift as you scan your body? Yeah. You know, as all tools, this is here for you to use. And all tools don't work for everyone. So I'm not saying this should be miraculous for you, but it has been pretty miraculous for me at times. When I do this, it shifts. It's become one of my go-tos when I'm stuck. So I encourage you to use this. So the outer world, I'd love to hear your stories afterwards to see how that felt for you. The outer world is our mirror. My husband, some of you met him before service, Sandy, you'll meet him after, gets up in the morning, looks in the mirror and says, I see God, and God sees me, and we are both well pleased. So I think that's a great affirmation to start the day. It's a remembering of who we are, where we come from, and what we can do in this world. So I'm going to invite you to continue understanding what drives you, what are your principles, what are your convictions, and what are you committing to in the world? Are they lining up? Are they in alignment? If you're in a job that's not lined up with your convictions, maybe it's time to shift that too. So now, I'm going to take us, before they get the hook, I'm going to take us into prayer. I'm going to invite you to take a breath and relax. And if you want to, you can open your eyes and look up during this prayer, or at least pretend you're looking up to the hills as we pray together, recognizing the oneness that is present right here in this room. As each one of us, showing up as each one of us, as divinely as just as we are. Showing up as joy and peace. Showing up as wisdom. Showing up as truth in the words that we speak. Showing up in the hugs and the hellos and the how do you do's before service. All of that was brought into this room as love this morning. And so we amplify that right here and now, knowing the oneness, our oneness, my oneness, your oneness, with that divine presence. There can be nothing and no one left out of this. If we are diving into the pool of life itself, we have to take everyone with us because we are that. And so we dive into this pool and speak a word of understanding that this center is imbued with wisdom, joy, love, and peace. It is imbued with boldness and courage and conviction and commitment. I bear witness to this in my time here with you today, that this center is filled with love, filled with truth, that each and every person right now can open this heart space and access that and carry it with them beyond these walls, so that as we leave this space, we leave it in a form more than when we came in, and we leave with more than we came in with. So we are blessing the world by being present here and being present in the world itself. And I speak a word that this teaching of Science of Mind is so free and easy that we express it in our lives through our doing and through our being, that we react to one another always from that space of love and truth, for this is my conviction. So our view is amplified here and now. And I just am so grateful for this time that I have had to spend with you. I'm so grateful that this center is here in Colombia and spreading its truth and value out into the world. I am so grateful for each and every hello and hug and blessing that has happened today. I am thankful. And I am also very thankful for this law that is here, saying yes to the words that I speak, saying yes, it is done, that it is fulfilling that which is spoken. And these words are spoken in truth and from the heart, and therefore must return here and now. And love is all there is, and so it is. Amen.